Archon number 2. Go on down to the feature match area. We got Taylor Boyardee on Boros control. Have to imagine that is a burn deck. Little Boros burn action. Life total control, as it has been called here in the Twitch universe, versus Alexander Wong on 5-color creativity. As far as I understand it, the deck with 5-color lands is pretty weak to the burn deck. Do you have any specific analysis on that? I love your hard-hitting analysis.
Yeah, I always hit the hard-hitting. It is just bad. Your deck essentially starts at like 13 life if you're lucky. All you have is a bunch of fetch and shocks, and you spend the first turn typically setting up a Triome. So while your deck does have really high power mid-game cards that can take over, and you can win all these grinding matchups really easily, this is a position where that doesn't really matter. Boros control, as we were jokingly calling here, being burn, is something that Taylor shows to bring and wants to play this sort of matchup. You play burn because of decks like 5-color creativity. They're slow trying to play these grindy games, and you're like, yeah, that's really cool. Lava spike you.
Absolutely, yeah, sweet, nice. How much damage your lands do to you? Okay, for sure. As we see, Bloodstained Mire, a damaging land on the start here for Alexander Wong, likely going to fetch a Triome on the end step. Taylor wasting no time grabbing that Sacred Foundry fetch shock. Here is a Goblin Guide getting to work immediately, and then Indomitable Creativity, the reveal. No extra cards for Alexander. We'll see if he has any responses to the Goblin Guide.
So Alexander has Bolt in hand. Looks like, yeah, I'm just going to, whatever. I'm going to take a bunch of damage away from my mana. I'm going to draw this creativity because I kind of need to slam an Archon. Because if Alexander can get to the attack step with an Archon, you often can win the game. Just because you gaining 3 life and putting them down a resource is often enough. Or essentially, every turn you're dealing 9 damage and gaining 3 life. All their cards do 3 damage. Can't really catch up.
Absolutely. And a Painless Mountain added for Alexander. That could be potentially big as this game develops. And we pass back to Taylor. No play, but you mentioned the Lightning Bolt now available, and Alexander's still able to grab a tapped land as Blood Crypt going to get added to the hand too. Little downside from the Goblin Guide. Lightning Bolt, after the trigger resolves, going to go ahead and happen. That Goblin Guide hits the bin. Mountain added to the mix for Taylor. Let's see what the follow-up is.
Yeah, both with the cool Kamigawa Mountains. I'll say this, the Snow Kamigawa Mountain, the best Kamigawa Mountain. No one ever plays it. Dragon Trigger is too cool. I understand that.
True. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Lava Spike, that's Lava Spike, right? Yeah, Lava Spike, the follow-up here. And then Skewer the Critics, going to go ahead and deal 6 for the trouble. Leaves Alexander here at 12. Make that 11. Fetch going to happen here. Likely going to be a Triome of some flavor.
Mm-hmm. It really does. And I wonder what exactly you're wanting. It looks like there's some confusion about life totals there between players. But yeah, Alexander here has the Blood Crypt in hand. There are a couple black lands in the deck, so late game you can hard cast your your Archons, and not have to just creativity into them. So that's a land that's really just like a shock mountain. It doesn't really cast any other spells besides that, and enables Leyline Binding, and that is about it. One thing you also note here is Alexander, like most of the creativity players, is playing 4 main deck Spell Pierce. This is something this deck does in order to fight early battles and go for its combo quick. That is something that could come up here, and this is why you saw Taylor go for those double burn spells right away and use the sorcery speed ones when there wasn't a chance for Alexander to Spell Pierce without losing 3 life in exchange for Spell Piercing. It's like, you're going to fetch shock? All right, sure, you countered my bolt. Cool.
yeah, for sure. Good job. I got it anyway. We made it happen. As Alexander untaps, looks like multiple lands that deal damage to Alexander, and kind of deciding which way is the best path to go. Teferi in hand among the mix. Need to get an object in play to get rid of with the Indomitable Creativity. That is, of course, part of the mix. Fetch land picked up the Wooded Foothills, going to allow the Dwarven Mine to make that happen. So we're just able to hold up all 3 mana here. Don't need to deploy anything like a Fable or anything like that. Turn passed over to Taylor. 9 life. Precarious spot to be against the deck that has a lot of 3 damage burn effects. Suspend Riftbolt, go.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna Prismari Command, make a treasure and probably loot here for Alexander. That's going to be something that's going to be really hard for Taylor to respond to with the creativity. And even if Alexander doesn't want to, can play Teferi Time Raveler and negate that Riftbolt. So Alexander has sort of made it through. This was kind of the big turn. Taylor could have very easily shot 9 damage at Alex's face, but here we are instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to wonder too, is there any world where the burn deck, after Archon enters play, you point a couple bolts at that and then maybe go on to win the game? Is that a plan, or is once Archon hits the battlefield, we're just in a lot of trouble and basically need to win right away?
Yeah, so my mama said sometimes you got to work hard for your wins, and
Uh-huh.
that is as the ultimate version of working hard. You are sort of losing 6 life, but it is better than dying. It is something that we might see come up, especially in post-board games. Sometimes you'll see players have Path to Exile out of their burn decks to answer those sort of things. But I think here in game 1, at this point in the game, not only will the Archon be very strong, as we are going to see Teferi Time Raveler come down, that's going to negate that Rift Bolt, but it's going to be a spot where Taylor's going to lose a card in hand, which is probably a bolt considering we have only spells in hand, right? We didn't play a land last turn. So the Archon is probably going to be a 3-for-1 in that sense. So probably not going to be the case, but we tick up here and Rift Bolt is not able to be cast. It actually stays exiled.
Yeah, it stays exiled. Whatever, get it moved over.
Yeah, it's a very
so
fun
we get one more
card.
turn maybe. Taylor, obviously Alexander maybe can set up, grab that Dwarven Mine, and then maybe 2 Archons can come down, and that'll slam the door in the game very, very quickly. So we'll see. Taylor, something like a third land into like triple bolt, of course, is like the nightmare, and there is land number 3. It's a nightmare for Alexander. We'll see what the follow-up is. Skullcrack, 3 to the dome. Can't do that one in response to any Archons thanks to Teferi. So Teferi kind of playing double duty here.
100%, yeah. And also one thing to note too is Teferi's Plus is very relevant with your creativity. You can just wait until the opportune moment to go for it. So if Taylor knows in this situation that there is a creativity in hand from the Goblin guy on turn 1, but Taylor has to cast spells on their turn. If they don't, then okay, Alexander can just do this end of turn, and we don't get a chance to do the sort of double bolt down an Archon line.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alexander, able to leverage the cards and the information from Goblin Guide to put himself in a great position here. I don't want to call it over. Alexander is at 5, but like you mentioned, with access to instant speed Archons, things are beginning to look a little grim if you're a Taylor Boyardee fan. We'll see. Enough burn spells can potentially power through in a quick flurry, but we know there's no in-step tricks thanks to Teferi. Stops all that from happening. Taylor's going to have a great turn on the following turn in order to power through the potential multiple Archons that could come down this turn.
Yeah, and it looks like
maybe just one.
It looks like Alex is just going to main phase here on the treasure and keep the dwarf in case of some haste creature shenanigans.
Yeah, some kind of removal spell or something, and maybe just a follow-up creativity later on. Now this dwarf gets to stay around. You get to whatever cash that one in, but either way, the first Archon usually good enough against a lot of spots, maybe good enough here if Alexander gets to untap, but certainly if second creativity is in the mix, that'll slam the door in the game very, very quickly. A lot of pressure on Taylor to have an incredible next turn if we want to see Burn be victorious in game number 1 here.
Yeah, small critique is maybe Alex should have got rid of the dwarf to have the treasure up in case we drew a spell pierce, since the only way we can win is kind of triple bolting. But, I'm going to let Alex cook despite Taylor being the Boyardee here, as we're going to go to game number 2.
Jeez. But yeah, either way, Alexander able to pick up game number 1, maybe stealing this one, as you called out. Matchup can be pretty tough for the 5-color deck in a format dominated by shock lands to fix your mana. So with that, let's have a look at some sideboard options, cutting right here to Taylor Boyardee and our Boros control burn deck. Love it. Let's see. We have Core Firewalker, 3 copies of Sanctifier in Vec, 2 Orvar the Allform, 2 Deflecting Palm, 3 Smash the Smitherings, 2 Chalice of the Void, and 2 Roiling Vortex. Mason, what do you like here?
So Orvar the Allform is for this matchup only. The card doesn't do anything anywhere else. It only matters when it is discarded in the Boros burn deck. And so we're going to bring that in, and that's going to be a way for us to discard a card to the Archon trigger, and then boom, put our own Archon in and sort of reset the game state with us having that. We're going to definitely bring that card in. I'm sort of the opinion that burn players shouldn't sideboard more than like 3 cards. Otherwise, their deck's going to kind of fall apart sometimes. We might see Deflecting Palm come in as a 1 of. We might see Rolling Vortex come in as like a 1 or a 2 of. Those are sort of 2 cards that can both line up pretty well against what the creativity deck is kind of doing. It's going to matter a lot on what Taylor is choosing to approach the game. I would guess that Rolling Vortex makes the most sense since we're on the play and we're going to be putting that pressure on our opponent. And we want to make sure that when the Archon comes down, we don't gain any life due to the Vortex being able to stop that. As we actually had some in the main deck here from Boyardee.
Yeah, we got access to 4 total, so yeah, we can potentially load up heavy on that if Taylor wants to. But let's go ahead and move over to the Alexander Wong 5-color creativity deck. In the sideboard, we have Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, Teferi Time Raveler, 2 copies of Flusterstorm, 2 copies of Striker Rich, 3 copies of Veil of Summer, 2 Hallowed Moonlight, 2 Brotherhood's End, and 2 Unmoored Ego. What do we like here?
So Flusterstorm's great. That's probably always just going to be a 1-for-1 against our opponent. That's great. Another thing that sort of is a little weird here is Strike It Rich might jump out to players. That's a card that's specifically used in most cases to beat Blood Moon. It's sort of your anti-Blood Moon attack. However, in this matchup, it is a way to sort of get to your mana quicker and have like a double spell turn. So I could see worlds where Alexander maybe wants to bring in Strike It Rich and just take out some of these more clunky cards that don't actually line up very well in this matchup. For example, Teferi Time Raveler is probably a card that we're going to want to lose from our deck. It doesn't really do much. We saw it be nice in that game, but it only really lines up against Riftbolt.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You cut some of these, value 2-for-1 stuff, get a little bit faster. It makes a lot of sense to me. And with Alexander Wong already up a game, only needs to get it done in 1 of 2 of the subsequent games. So we'll see if Alexander can get that done, having a very fortuitous first game, kind of like I said, able to use that information from Goblin Guide to guarantee himself a Indomitable Creativity. Goblin Guide, known for its power across multiple formats, maybe gave Alexander the tools to win the game there. Game number 1, a very, very good draw. But Taylor this time gets to be on the play, and we'll see exactly if he can kind of blow the doors off of Alexander before we get things started.
Yep. Yeah, and that fast start is really what matters. We saw in that game where Taylor seemed to have a bunch of 2-mana burn spells in hand, including Searing Blaze. That sort of card's probably going to end up leaving the deck in order to just having those more efficient sideboard cards we talked about before for Boyardee here. So that is something that we can kind of expect. And it's going to lead to less clunkiness in the matchup, which is going to make this sort of the true nature of the matchup shine. We sort of drew the worst half of our deck as Boyardee. Even our Skullcrack, which is sometimes, our really good burn spell can stop the Archon due to Teferi coming down first to Alexander, sort of sequencing correctly, made it so we didn't even get to line that card up well.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly true. A card I kind of want to call out as players are kind of taking a look at opening hands and resolving mulligans here. Do you like Eidolon in this matchup? Feels like if they're trying to resolve a 4-mana card, it could be not great, but if you're burning in things like Strike It Riches and stuff, Bolt, Spell Pierces, it could be really good.
So I hate to do this to you in chat, but welcome to the new age boomers. We don't play Eidolon anymore in Burn. It's not good enough. Boyardee here does not have any Eidolons in the 75. And so that is something that, it's not good. It breaks everyone's heart. I'm not even sure if it's right, but typically on Magic Online, Burn players have been moving away from that card just because it doesn't do like it used to. Cards like Solitude, Leyline Binding, it makes it so it's not always getting in its 2 damage. Before it used to be like, well, if you kill an Eidolon, it's like it had haste, you do 2, you move on with your day.
Sure. I mean, you see the Roiling Vortexes specifically, kind of that like potential swap as far as cards that you can kind of proactively put in play, maybe amount to stopping your opponent from doing their game plan, lest they actually just die to it on board. It's seen a replacement full 4 available in the 75 for Taylor, and with a format dominated by Cascade cards and lots of just incidental life gain, the card's extremely strong and makes a lot of sense that it would be more powerful in a similar role.
Hatsune Miku sleeves.
As someone that played a lot of Izzet decks in my life, I've lost to many Eidolon, the Great Revel.
Oh yeah, you love to see there's no Eidolon.
Happy to see players. It gone. Get out of here.
Yeah, yeah. You think that idea is really good, and they should probably just never think about it again and make it a clean cut forever.
Forget it's a card. Yeah. It's not real. Yeah. Alexander on the mulligan. Looks like we have opening hands. Taylor maybe also on a mulligan. Both players on.
Yeah, both players went to 6. I think Taylor's deciding, do I want to actually keep this?
Yeah, and can't get a great look at what the decision is, but some thoughts on it for sure.
I wonder if this might be a situation where we have like an Orvar in hand and we're trying to figure out, can we actually assign lethal through a piece of interaction before the Orvar will matter or not? That's sort of one thing you need to think about when you're on a mulligan with these Boros burn decks, because they do need every piece of the Buffalo to typically win.
Right. Known for kind of having to be really, really slim on lands. And once you get to a certain point in the game, you're just hoping that your burn player draws lands, not burn spells, because otherwise you can't win. And here is the Rift Bolt coming off suspend. And 3 damage should go to face 4 Alexander Wong. 1 should be in the graveyard. As we think about our turn 2 here, 2 damage already dialed up. Things like Skewer the Critic are available for this turn if we want them. 2 mana, Roiling Vortex. Okay. Spell Pierce, great time for it.
Yeah, this is a card we talked about, might be seeing a sideboard in, and we saw Taylor Boyardee have this in their main deck as a 2 of already. So this card's going to prevent life gain from the opponent and make it so that you kind of get a consistent ping every turn. That's going to make your cards like Screw the Critics much more reliable at turning on. Normally, you have to have another spell resolve, so a card like Spell Pierce might stop the Skewer from happening a turn. With Rolling Vortex, we're just going to get the 1 every single turn.
Right. And like you said, like maybe being able to kind of supplement your skull cracks with that activated ability can do a lot to mitigate the non-lethal Archon turns where, you just need to kind of stop them from getting life, discard a card, hope to top deck a burn spell. That's the setups that burn decks get to eventually anyway. Rolling Vortex continues to do a great job of this. As we are shuffling up, going to grab a tapped, looks like Savai Triome, I believe.
Yep. Back-to-back Savai Triomes for you. Kind of lucky.
Yeah, a lot of Mardu cards flying around today.
It's so hot right now.
A lot of mountains. Very, very hot. As we're going to untap. Take 1 to the Rolling Vortex. Going to go ahead and draw a card. Let's see if Fire Ice among the mix for Taylor. Card does a good job answering some of the burn creatures. Also can kind of tap some lands. Maybe we're interested in doing some of that. It's 1 damage coming across for Taylor. Can't imagine he minds too much. So we move to turn 3 for the burn deck. Can't get a great look at the hand, but I assume here Alexander basically has to have the creativity on 4 and hope that Taylor does not also have the Orvar in order for things to kind of line up here on the draw, given how far behind Alexander is just off of being on the draw to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I'm unsure. I'm curious what the thinking was about. So it's either maybe we have a couple creatures and burn spells. I'm trying to figure out, do we want to get the creatures in now versus like when do we want to use the spells? Or if there's maybe some other card, like a second Rolling Vortex, where we sort of take this turn off, but we insulate ourselves from a card like Leyline Binding, which could very easily come down here at the end of turn.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just a removal spell for the Rolling Vortex can be disastrous for the Archon turns that we called out. Really want to be able to have that in play, have the red mana available to stop any potential life gain. Lava Spike going to come across, even 3 damage, 4 bolts from Victory. Let's see what the follow-up here is. Make that 3, skewer the, or sorry, make that 3, skewer the critics. Going down, going to go down to 9 is Alexander Wong. Make that 8 as a fetch from Bloodstained Mire coming through.
Yeah, and we're going to have to see here, does Alex have the Triumph set up so that we can Leyline Binding here and sort of remove this Rolling Vortex and keep our life total precious? Because going to 7 matters specifically for Boros Charm in a really big way. Also, the next turn, it will be in a position where it's like we can get, double bolted just from the Rolling Vortex trigger. So we're going to need to answer that either now or somehow invalidate it for the rest of the game.
Yeah, to the extent that like we're doing math in 3s, as soon as Rolling Vortex cashes in its 3rd point, that's also just a really big one too. So if you're not answering it here, then like it's likely, you're going to take 1 this turn, and then I'm not necessarily, unless you top deck something, you're going to take a 1 on the following turn, and then it's a 2-bolt game instead of a 3-bolt game, and that's a big deal. So something like Leyline Binding could be huge. You've been calling it out, and here it is. Leyline Binding on instep. That one's going to go after the Rolling Vortex. And Alexander going to untap, no damage coming through. And that is a huge deal for Alexander's chances of winning this game, as tapped Blood Crypt is added to the mix.
Yep. And, we mentioned before, Alexander has both Flusterstorm and Spell Pierce. If Alex has one of those in hand, it's going to be very hard for Taylor to get these last couple points across because we are low on cards for Boyardee.
Yeah, looks like only 2 cards left from what I see. And even if they're both lightning bolts, that's not good enough. Get it done all on its own. It looks like one of them is a land, Sunbait Canyon. That one's immediately going to get cashed out. Another card coming. And no play past the turn.
Drake, you seem like a Hatsune Miku fan. Are you a Hatsune Miku fan?
I
Do you even know what that is? That's the character on Taylor's sleeves. They're like a pop star type thing.
Oh, yeah, no, I have no idea. Dude, I don't watch any shows. I'm so...
It's not a show. She's a pop star. It's okay. We'll talk about it later as the Skullcrack comes down.
I'll take your word for it, Mason. I'll take your word for it. I'm so uncultured. You really outclass me in analysis and in culture.
You got me. You got me when it
I
comes
was
to
gonna go ahead and
Southern
cycle. Dwarven Mine coming across, gonna make a 1/1. 4 mana right away. That has to be a creativity, and it sure is. This would be the time to have Orvar. You mentioned it's only for this matchup, and it's only for these spots for the most part. And yeah, gonna come up big here. There's an Archon. Gonna go ahead and get added to play thanks to Indomitable Creativity, getting rid of the dwarf token. Exactly the kind of turn 4 Alexander's looking for in this matchup.
Yeah, and that is what we call in the business game. Taylor has no cards in hand. Every card Taylor draws does 3 to 4 damage. So until we draw an Orvar, which is, I think, our only good draw left at this point, we are going to basically invalidate the life gain. So it's Orvar or Skullcrack are kind of the only cards we can draw here, unless Taylor did decide to bring in something like Deflecting Palm, as we will just be gaining so much life over these next couple turns.
Right. Even something like Roiling Vortex is just not even going to win the race, right? Like it's actively bad for you to take the point. And Searing Blaze is the card that was drawn, and that's not going to be good enough. And Alexander's going to win this one. 2 games to 0.
Yeah, if you're Alexander, you got to love having that happen. You know, winning this sort of bad matchup is how good tournament runs happen. No one wins a tournament without beating a bad matchup. So Alexander's got that done. Maybe I'll hit a couple 4-color control players, as we are going to jump live into match number 2 right now. But yeah, you know, good stuff there.
Fast match. And you know what? Burn is something that promises that. You know, the game's going to be over quick one way or the other, and it sure was. And Alexander able to, you know, kind of steal that one thanks to some very, very quick creativities in both games. So yeah, let's dive right in to our backup feature match where we got a little, oh my, we got game objects in play here for the Mono White Hammer player. On your left, Sam Grasseschi versus Emily Kuntz. And Bant Blink Soul Herders with a lot of power and toughness versus Pure Steel Paladin. I see Colossus Hammer, Shadow Spear. Oh, we're loading up an Esper Sentinel. We got a Cauldron. Wow, we just got all the equipment versus some massive Soul Herders. We're doing it here.
Yeah, the good part of featuring Burn as our main is we get to cover our backup. As these players are still in game number 1, that you can tell because, you know, Soul Herder's been in play for 11 turns with all the dice on it.
Yeah, that is a lot. And with Sam at 43, I mean, you have to imagine this Solitude has been going to work, exiling creatures that have hammers on them. And yeah, so as a result, we have just massive. I mean, I don't know the power toughness is. What is this? 2, 22, 23, a 23, 23 trample lifelink coming across. And then our Esper Sentinel here is a 6 + 10, 16 trample, first strike, the works.
Yeah, and our Urza Sagas are also 16.
Oh, sure, of course. Ephemerate. All right. We're going to ephemerate the... Would you like to pay 16?
Oh, yeah, and
no.
These Soul Herders get bigger. All right.
Oh, sure. yeah, sure. Add more dice. Why not? Okay. So we're ephemerating our Ice Fang.
Oh, instead of
goes
interesting.
To exile. That Soldier might be an exile. I think that might be the exile.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay. I thought it was attacking.
Yeah, I have to imagine if that Solitude was available, we'd be ephemerating that. And that looks like it's going to conclude game 1. So it came there at the end. Looks like that the Blink deck had a pretty good setup. The Hammer deck, more or less, just able to power through it with just every single equipment available to it. And is going to get game number 1 there in this matchup. So let's take a look at the sideboard here. 3 Drannith Magistrate, 2 Sanctifier Invect, 2 Solitude, 1 Blacksmith's Skill, 2 March of Otherworldly Light. Can't get a great one. Looks like Surge of Salvation, 1 copy of that. 3 Hallowed Moonlight and 1 Pithing Needle. What do you like here against Bant Blink? Bunch of value creatures.
I'm going to take a double check here on Hallowed Moonlight until enter of a creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast. So we're going to want that one. That's going to be pretty good at stopping the Soul Herder and the Ephemerate type stuff. That's going to be pretty nice. There's maybe a world where you would want Solitude in some spots, just because that deck is sort of about specific, like getting a couple creatures together and having a breakup there. You're going to notice if you look at Sam's deck here, if you look on Melee, it says 14 lands. It's actually 18 because of Miria's Call. We have sort of the double-face lands. That allows us to have our 2 main deck Solitudes as well. This is something we have seen content creators like Disgruntled Elf really popularize, and we've seen some on Moto as well. So I imagine we're going to definitely see the Hallowed Moonlights, and we might see a card like Solitude, and probably see Blacksmith Skill come in as a way to fight over stuff. And if you have the read on Force of Vigor, which I'm going to assume that the Bant Blink deck has enough green cards, you probably want Surge to stop a Force of Vigor, but that's going to be sort of a dealer's choice moment there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously can be good against some Solitudes type setups and stuff like that. So let's take a look at this pretty interesting Bant Blink deck utilizing, Ephemerates and Eternal Witness and stuff like that. We got 3 copies of Burnt and Forged Tinder, 3 Knight of Autumn, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 Flusterstorms, 3 Counterspell, and 3 Force of Negation. A lot of counter magic. What do you like?
I think Knight of Autumn is definitely going to come in. That's going to ETB and just kill one of the most important cards from the Hammer player. And we could maybe see a world where something like Force Negation comes in. I don't think it's worth it, but some players might value that card there to sort of stop the fast kills. It kind of depends on what your matchup plays out like that. But we're going to definitely see Knight of Autumn. I think the players are ready for game number 2.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into game number 2. And you called out potentially Force of Vigor being something. Makes a lot of sense if you're a blink deck. Reach for a card like Knight of Autumn, something you can blink a ton, has a lot of different value and a lot of different matchups in order to have as your coverage for artifact and enchantment decks. Plays your game plan very, very well, but is a lot more expensive, not free like Force of Vigor is. And we'll see if that comes up here as Emily has Misty Rainforest pass of the turn. Just an Ornithopter is the start for Sam, as Emily is fetching here on Instep.
Yeah, it really depends the kind of way you want to build your sideboards, because we see in some of Emily's sideboard things like Counterspell, for example, when you combine with her Eternal Witness and Ephemerates, create a lock. And so, some players might play a single Knight of Autumn for its ability to be found off something like a Coco or flickered with a Eternal Wanderer or something like that. But here, with Eternal Witness, you could also have Force of Vigor and just pick it up a bunch. So really, there's a lot of different ways you can approach this. And that puts a lot of pressure on your opponents, as these decks aren't super common, but they have a lot of play to them.
Absolutely. Is Wall of Blossoms, the green Wall of Omens, going to be added to the mix for Emily, and an Inkmoth Nexus, Stoneforge Mystic very, very quickly. Long game 1. These players understanding they need to play a little bit faster if we're going to go ahead and finish this match, as these games can get extremely grindy. And Colossus Hammer added to the hand for Sam. Pass the turn on back to Emily.
Yeah, and this is a big spot too. If you're playing against Sam, as Emily is, if Sigarda's Aid comes down next turn, we're sort of threatening to sort of go for the combo in the following turn. So there's a lot of pressure in the moment of, okay, this is my one turn to sort of tap out before this Inkmoth Nexus is going to sort of be having the combo hold over my head the entire game. As it looks like Teferi Time Raveler is being played and was brought in from the sideboard.
Yeah, Teferi available here. Going to be able to return something to its owner's hand, and maybe can do some amount to stop an instant speed Inkmoth kill. Could of course pick up your own Wall of Blossoms if you're looking for just card advantage mattering, but I have to imagine, Stoneforge Mystic, pretty scary. The threat of something like Cauldron, even if it's already in hand, something you probably need to respect, and going to be able to do some amount of defending it with this Wall of Blossoms. But Inkmoth itself can actually pick off the Teferi, so kind of need to pick what Sam's going to do on his turn, as he very quickly draws and deploys a Horizon Canopy.
Yeah. And some players might be against or afraid of flickering back the Stoneforge Mystic. But like you said, Cauldron might be a card that Emily can't beat, and maybe she can just beat a Hammer. That is not unreasonable for her deck to do, especially with Solitude. So it's going to really come down to sort of how you want to approach playing these games. As we saw last game, Cauldron came down and did seem to matter as Hammer comes up on this Ornithopter.
Yeah, we got free equips right away. Able to deploy the Piercesteel Paladin is Sam, and then immediately cash out that Colossus Hammer that was found, draw a card, and equip it to the Ornithopter. No longer has flying. Emily can choose to block this, and that will successfully take care of all of the damage. Elects not to block. As we pass the turn back to Emily, takes a big old bonk from the Ornithopter on the ground here. And Teferi gets to stick around for another turn. Is going to stop some amount of instant speed shenanigans with something like Sigarda's Aid. But Piercesteel Paladin looking to be Sam's plan for the moment, as I believe Temple Garden added to the mix here. Uptick on Teferi. Take that out.
Emily probably wanting to use Wall of Blossoms to block in the future to save more potential damage. But now we've opened up Shadow Spear as a line. So if she wants to stop that, she's going to need to answer this Piercesteel Paladin sooner than later as Soul Hunter comes down.
Yeah, being able to block in the future allows for things like this, where you have the flicker. You can also potentially, if we draw something like Ephemerate, able to block Ephemerate, kind of check some amount of this, as long as there's no trampling equipment to come down. But we know that there's a Stoneforge Mystic in Sam's hand, and if Sam wants it, should be able to have access to a Shadow Spear. As here is another Colossus Hammer. That one's going to draw a card from Piercesteel Paladin trigger. Going to fire up the Inkmoth Nexus and move some hammers over to it.
From the Ornithopter. Now the Ornithopter gains flying again, loses flying.
Yeah, we can do the flying again trick, because we get to activate it again, give it flying once again, and now it has flying. And in fact, and we have Solitude pitching Wall of Omens to go ahead and take care of the Inkmoth Nexus, and we have the
Ephemerate.
Ephemerate too. Oh my
Oh.
god, we have it all.
Yeah, Emily had it rolled up, and that's probably why she went for in the last one, trying to maybe bait Sam for not getting more hammers. Sam punished for not equipping the Paradise Mantle with the Ornithopter now. Can't play another play this turn. Unfortunately for Emily, though, she'll just have to deal with the fact that Sam gained, 20-something life this turn. But she's in a commanding position. Having the flickering every turn of Solitude is something that is almost impossible to beat.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. Sam, we saw in game one, I think had to use a Solitude to check the first Solitude that came down, and now Ephemerate going to be able to come off suspend, can either draw a card, that's the floor, or it can flicker the Solitude and get rid of this Ornithopter as well. Chose to flicker the Wall of Blossoms. 2 cards coming for the turn here. Tapped Hollowed Fountain added to the mix for Emily. And what an insane sequence for Emily. Able to just dispatch, looked like she was just dead, able to actually just kill all of Sam's permanents. Here's Knight of Autumn, and alongside Soul Hoarder, I can't imagine this game is going to progress for too much longer, as Knight of Autumn is going to be able to take care of creatures and the hammers that are left over, as Solitude's going to find its way to the red zone.
Yeah, and I love the play here for Emily, too. Making sure to flicker something like the Wall of Blossoms. We have the Soul Hoarder that can flicker our Solitude at the end of turn. We don't need to worry about it. And now that we have this Knight of Autumn, we can just blow up the hammer, and who really cares about this Ornithopter? If it's going to be hitting us, thanks to Teferi, it won't be at instant speed, and we can just jump block when that time comes.
Yeah, and a huge shout out to the no blocks on that first attack. It is tempting to just go ahead and cash out the Wall of Blossoms, but Emily able to use the Wall of Blossoms to refill her hand, make sure she has a good density of cards for the Solitudes. Things like that matter a lot when you're going to be 1-for-2ing yourself with these elementals, and even digging yourself to things like Ephemerates and stuff like that to set up a really explosive turn. Kind of saving your resources and using your life total as a resource. Something Emily has done very well, I think, in this game, as Stoneforge Mystic is going to get deployed. And another hammer added to hand, but with Solitude and Knight of Autumn in play alongside Soul Herder and Teferi, it kind of feels like a locked up situation. I mean, what does the outs look like?
Yeah, it's really hard for Sam when Emily has the Teferi too, because otherwise an out might be like, okay, we get 2 flyers, we Sigarda's Aid, the one that can't be blocked, whatever, boom, we win, right? We get this Inkmoth through. But with Teferi protected, it's going to be very hard. So Sam's going to need to draw something like the Solitudes that were in Sam's main deck, potentially boarded in as well, because Blacksmith Skills are also not going to work against it. So, Emily really right here, her job is just to take over the game slowly but surely, make sure no momentum gets built against her, and just attack in for a little bit, because that is the only problem with her sort of deck is it's very good at killing stuff, but winning is sort of an afterthought. And in low time rounds like this, we don't want to end up with a draw. That might be something that's going to be a problem for her there. So we do see 5 mana tapped, and it's Time Warp.
Time Warp. Well, that'll do a good job of getting the game over with in a hurry here.
Yeah, and that is something. So we've seen Emily here. Her deck has Eternal Witness in it. That's going to do a really good job of being a loop with the Soul Herder as soon as we find the Eternal Witness, and that will win. We talked about, winning sort of an afterthought can take some time. Well, once you present a loop of infinite turns, hey, I'll just do this every turn, I'll Teferi eventually bounce away your board and start attacking you or recasting my Solitudes, however you want to do it. And Soul Herder gets bigger and bigger each turn. We saw Soul Herder sort of stay back to protect Teferi, but now we might see Soul Herder sort of smack in, for 4 damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you mentioned setting up like a kill. It doesn't matter how long your deck takes to kill. If you're taking all the turns, it'll happen eventually. And that may be what we're setting up for, as Emily able to go ahead and take another turn here after blowing up something. Didn't get a great look. I believe we dispatched the hammer with the Knight of Autumn. Huge Soul Herder coming across, rumbling across the red zone for 6 damage. And we've seen these Soul Herders grow massive from what we saw in game number 1. Just does a good job, not just playing the flicker game plan for Emily, but able to just close the game very quickly once things get going as well. A Wall of Omens added to the mix. You get a great look right there. Soul Herder grows not just from its own ability, but from additional flickers with things like Ephemerate. And that is something that has happened quite a bit this game so far. So the 3 mana uncommon from Modern Horizons plays huge here, as Urza Saga goes back to the hand with Teferi. Wow. And a flicker, draw another card here.
And
here's
like
another Soul Herder. Sure.
Yeah, and that's going to allow us to flip around these walls and blow something up. This turn we might end up just killing both creatures. With Solitude, you can blow up one and then have Knight of Autumn blow up the artifact. You can't target the same thing twice, obviously, because it flickers, it won't be there. But we have enough things that's not a huge problem.
Yeah, and with 2 Soul Hoarders, I mean, these Soul Hoarders just grow each other. They grow super fast. This game, 35 life, going to be short order to work through. And it would not surprise me if Sam did not take too many more draw steps from this position, even though he is sitting at 35 life. Truly emblematic, maybe, of how life totals don't necessarily demonstrate who is winning the game. This is certainly a case study in that.
Yeah, I think Sam's sort of holding on hope that he could maybe assemble Hammer plus Sigarda's Aid on this Inkmoth Nexus in a turn, and it's sort of being like, well, as long as I have that out, I'm going to continue to play, as we do see a Cauldron get grabbed here. But from Emily's perspective, all she has to do is hold back a flyer or / find one, and she'll be fine. So that doesn't even count, any ephemerates on Night of Autumn. So for her, she's really got a bunch of really good draws to find here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if she doesn't draw anything, the Soul Hoarders will make sure that something relevant happens in this turn, as the players once again moving very, very quickly in order to be able to finish this match, as game 1 did take so long. Literally, game 1 took as long as our first match did. So these players are going to be very, very quick to finish this match. Wall of Blossoms out of the mix, card coming for Emily, and we will see Windswept Heath lead for turn.
Yep.
And we'll see what this attack looks like. Yeah, I have to imagine it's going to be a massive attack. Some things are even going to be able to untap and block. So love seeing all the creatures coming across the red zone here. 7, 8, 12, plus 3, 15, plus 2. Make that 17. Yeah, that'll be a 2-turn kill once these Soul Hoarders grow from this turn. And
yeah, not to be that person, but I do think we're probably supposed to trade our Stoneforge Mystic with the Night of Autumn. It's not going to stick around from the Solitude anyways. Now Night of Autumn's on board, making our Sigarda Aid out a little bit harder to accomplish due to Ephemerate maybe flickering a Night of Autumn. So
true. Yeah, the trade probably would have. I mean, the Solitude's got to be hard to beat on its own. We're just in a lot of trouble as it is. And yeah, Sam going to very quickly pick things up here. And we'll get a quick look at the decks one more time. As we shuffle up for game number 3. Have to imagine that's going to happen very, very quickly. Something I want to call out is when you're Sam, you see those Teferis in the deck in game 2. How does that change your sideboarding? Do you throttle out maybe some of these instant speed effects, or where do you stand on that?
Yeah, especially with the time changing as well. Like with the time in the round being so short, you might see a card like Surge of Salvation get removed from the deck. There is some amount of Surge Salvation and Blacksmith Skill. You can cast them when your Inkmoth Nexus is still a land and your things gain hexproof. And that's something that you can do to sort of beat a thing like Solitude. If we had Solid 1 more mana, we could have, Blacksmith Skill the land, animate, attack, boom, it's already hexproof. We can't do anything to stop it. So we might still see those go, because there might just be some cards that Sam doesn't super like in the main deck, like Esper Sentinel. But besides that, we probably won't see too much, but it is definitely a consideration. If your opponent has a bunch of Teferis, you definitely probably want to cut those cards.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a look at the game. Players are drawing opening hands here. Yeah, a little bit of adjustment potentially possible for Sam. We see Emily already ready to go. Opening hand dialed up. I love to see this kind of stuff. Both players very eager to make sure this match reaches a natural conclusion.
Yeah, it looks like Sam did opt to keep an Esper Sentinel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's Teferis involved in the mix, it does look a lot more appealing.
Yeah. Also, maybe a situation to quickly bring them in on the play or something, but
yeah, Esper Sentinel deployed alongside Ornithopter. Yeah, I mean, you need game objects to put the hammers on too. So to some extent, I'm sure that matters. As Emily very quickly deploying a Utopia Sprawl, Esper Sentinel going to go ahead and trigger. Card coming for Sam.
Yeah, Sam getting big rewarded there. And Utopia Sprawl also a really important card for Emily here. And that's why you're seeing her sort of jamming it on turn 1, because for her, it is a card that lets her get to these powerful 3-drops, which her deck is really built around strong 3 and 4-drop cards. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I can't get a great look at what it was named. Probably going to be either blue or white, given that, green is already available. Depends on what the turn 2 is going to look like. And turn 2 for Sam looks like Urza's Saga into Ornithopter. Esper Sentinel coming across the red zone for 1 point of damage. And you mentioned Hallowed Moonlight, really the only spell available in Sam's hand. The other thing, Amaria's Call, is basically just a land. That's something you called out when we were looking at decks. Urza's Saga, basically two lands for Sam and the Hallowed Moonlight. We'll see if that Hallowed Moonlight's going to be able to come into play at all here.
Yeah, it's definitely a card that's really strong against all the flicker cards in our deck. But yeah, here's the Teferi. We're going to get to draw again. Wow, looking at Emily's deck, she has so few cards that actually trigger, but Sam having it on the play here, and it shows why play draw sort of decisions can matter, right? It's a spot where it's like, yeah, this on the play is actually a lot more appealing. My opponent has to jam cards like Utopia Sprawl will fall behind. And we do see Emily just sort of bounce the Urza Saga, probably trying to buy herself some time, and sees, Sam didn't develop anything strong like a Stoneforge Mystic, Sigarda's Aid, anything like that. might be using this opportunity to get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If Sam's planning to do Urza Saga things as his primary game plan, bouncing it's going to do a lot to set that back, as the Teferi is going to get cleaned up, excuse me, by
the Esper Sentinel. Don't worry, Drake. I got you. But as the
Thank
friendly
you.
drum
My
comes
God.
down, you were choked up by how beautiful the play was. I understand.
Yeah, I was. You're absolutely right. And yeah, Esper Sentinel going to go ahead and clean up the Teferi as we move back to Emily's turn number 4. Temple Garden coming in untapped, and 3 mana coming down.
I really like Emily's approach to not play. So by the way, this is Cosmic Rift, Drake. I'm sure you know Cosmic Rift.
No idea.
Do you want me to read it for people at home?
Absolutely got me. I have no idea.
So it's 1 blue, 1 green, white. Choose it's an instant. Choose target permanent card in your graveyard. If it has mana value 3 or less, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put it on the battlefield, put it into your hand. Gain 3 life. So,
it's a one shot like Savine's Reclamation. All right, Cosmic Rebirth. That's a nice new addition here.
Yep. After the Machine Aftermath card. Players have been experimenting with those, just out for a week now. But yeah, it's actually like a great card to rebuy her Eternal Witnesses and things like that. Those sort of cards get immediately killed. And in this matchup, it is something that, or in any matchup really, you really want that sort of card. So having it is nice. And it also just fail state is a regrowth, which is very nice.
Right.
It's not about
and regrowing your Eternal Witness and your Soul Hoarders, I'm sure, going to come up fairly frequently as Night of Autumn added to the mix for Emily. This is like the important sideboard card in the matchup. If you're looking for something to blink, doesn't get much better than Night of Autumn against Sam. That was going to pick off the Urza Saga, which has just struggled to get going all game, as the Esper Sentinel has been rumbling across the red zone for all the damage that has been dealt by non-land permanents this game.
Yeah, and I really like Emily's commitment to sort of stopping this, right? She's been like, hey, no, I'm going to stop it here. And paying the 1, make sure the Esper doesn't get another draw here. But fighting over that, a lot of players won't keep a hand unless they have hammer or a way to equip. Urza Saga counts as a hammer, so fighting over it makes a lot of sense. You're sort of preventing the hammer from coming down when maybe you might get got if it came down a little sooner, as Sam does seem to draw an actual hammer and is hesitant because this Night of Autumn's in play.
Yeah. And it looks like nothing to put at all. No attacks in the Esper, and maybe the gas stopped a little bit here for Sam as we move back to Emily's turn. A lot of mana available thanks to these Utopia Sprawls. 3 mana on 1 land. You see that happen right here. And Cosmic Rebirth once again. That one can rebuy the Teferi, and then we can just pick up our Night of Autumn, redeploy Night of Autumn. I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Oh, no, we're bouncing. Okay, we're bouncing the Urza Saga to go ahead and stop that one for another turn. Another card coming for Emily. Let's see if there's any further follow-ups beyond that. But once again, like you mentioned, containing these Urza Sagas turn after turn, really stifling Sam's progression.
Yeah, and Emily's just making her land drops. And once again, her deck has sort of more powerful cards if she can get the pieces interlocked than the Hammer deck does. The Hammer deck's just more efficient at it. So we're going to see that Triome played there, and that's a pretty big sign. You know, if your opponent has all this mana and is playing a Triome, they might have some big double spells in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah, not choosing to play it, not cycle it. Worth noting, of course, 2 mana on Instep. Ice Fang Quaddle, going to bring another card along with it. No effects and response for Sam, thanks to Teferi. Emily knows all the things going to work. Able to move very, very quickly through the Instep to her turn. Uptick on Teferi coming through. We'll see what the big finale is here for Emily. Something like a Soul Herder would be a big deal. Ephemerate coming down. That's another great option. Triggers Esper Sentinel. See if she's going to pay for that. Not clear, but did destroy the Urza Saga. So I think we're on turn 5 of Urza Saga attempting to function and failing to do so.
Yeah, Sam really has just not been allowed to have these Urza Sagas. And it's like, that's so not your toy.
Yeah, absolutely not. Stop that. And Sam says, okay, fine, I'll play a Plains. And here is Ginger Brute. That one able to be unblockable with the additional cost of 1 mana.
Yeah. Only haste creatures can block, and Banff not really known for its haste creatures.
True. It's going to be a big deal if we can get something like a hammer deployed. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and make that able to be only blocked by haste creatures. We're attacking. I have to imagine we're going after Teferi. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take down the Teferi by 1. Keep that from doing any further bouncing beyond this, as Ice Fang Quaddle number 2 added to the mix for Emily. And Emily really being able to stop things in the air and things in the ground as Ice Fang Quaddle number 3 comes down. Ginger Brute, kind of Sam's only hope for being able to connect with a Colossus Hammer from here with all of this defense in play for Emily.
Yeah, and Emily, worth noting, has the snow permanents so that these Ice Fang Quaddles are death touching. So it's not even like they're just chump blocking like we sometimes see in these decks. They are actually factually killing stuff, as we are going to pay the 1 for the Ephemerate trigger, and then we're going to Knight of Autumn blow up the Gingerbrew since it's the only thing we can't easily block.
Wow, this Knight of Autumn has just overperformed, as you would expect it to from the Bant Blink deck, just over and over again, able to dispatch of Urza's Sagas, Ginger Brutes, and the Ice Fang Quaddles, able to clean everything up. Emily in a great position, but we will have to see if she's able to close this game in time. You mentioned these Bant Blink decks often trying to win as an afterthought. We'll see what she can assemble. Eternal Witness added alongside Ephemerate. That's going to be a big
good.
Deal. Yeah, we can now I get to pick all my things up forever.
Yeah, so if you don't know, the way it kind of works is your Ephemerate, you sort of use the first one on your Eternal Witness to just get a card. Any card you want from your graveyard. Then the second one, you can target your Eternal Witness when the Ephemerate is rebounded. It'll be in the graveyard upon resolution, which means the Eternal Witness can target it. So you basically have white draw a card every turn. And that is really, really strong. That's why you see things like Counterspell and Emily's Sideboard, is there are some matchups where that's actually a game-winning play. And in this matchup, just, have my Eternal Flicker. The Knight of Autumn can be really strong. We see Howled Moonlight here get cast immediately. This might be a start. Emily wants to, do this before it resolves. Yeah, we're going to see the Knight of Autumn.
Yeah, going to go ahead and respond to the Ephemerate. Hallowed Moonlight loses a lot of value when there's a Teferi Time Raveler in play. Going to go ahead and cycle that one. Emily responds with the Ephemerate. That one's going to take care of Esper Sentinel and is going to go ahead and be on suspend, as Sam desperately looking for any of the cards that work here and doesn't seem to find any, as just 2 Ornithopters in play for him as Emily untaps Ephemerate, target Eternal Witness, get the Ephemerate back, and let's draw for turn. That is the combination you just mapped out for us. And now something like a Time Warp, something like a Counterspell, anything like that can just slam the door on this game, and Emily free to attack with her army of creatures until this game reaches its conclusion as Utopia Sprawl number 3 added on that now massive forest.
Yeah, and these players are going to be dangerously close to time in the round. Our feature matches are on a slightly different clock just because we have to make them walk up to the table and set them up. So it looks like there's 2 minutes left in this game. That's probably enough for Emily to get there if she can find Time Warp before time's actually called. But, we'll have to see what exactly goes on as Sam is, asking, okay, what are the power toughnesses here? Knight of Autumn can actually grow. So, it might be the situation where we flicker into a 4/3, whatever, just to hit you for more.
Right, just get the game over with. I mean, we have 4/7. We have a 2-turn clock on board. So assuming no blockers or the blockers are covered or whatever, the game should reach a natural conclusion. But there is a lot more magic that can be played as Horizon Canopy cycled from this Urza's Saga from Sam. Desperate looking for anything. Sigarda's Aid deployed. And
Emily has so much more self-control than me. I would have ephemerated on that Urza's Saga the moment the trigger went on the side. I'd have been like,
it off.
No.
How many times did I have to teach you this lesson?
Yeah, exactly. How many times am I going to blow up your Urza's Sagas for you to learn that they do not exist in my neighborhood?
Absolutely not. As the Knight of Autumn does get flickered by the Ephemerate, it looks like we went ahead and picked off the Sigarda's Aid. Eternal Witness does rebuy that one. And tick up Teferi, crunch with the team. That looks like 6 damage. Put Sam down to 8. Gonna go ahead and Ephemerate, target the Knight of Autumn. Yeah, get that. Yeah. No sagas. Not around here. Not in this house. Not ever. Where's the saga? Sagas. Hits the bin.
And another blocker. It's technically untapped. Is we're gonna play 3 hammers. All right, if we draw Pure Still Paladin or something, if we sell the Ginger Brute, maybe something happened. But yeah, this is end of turn Solitude because it's a 3/2. And now we can just choose not to cast our Ephemerate. And I believe that is game for Emily. All she has to do is say, nah, I'm good.
I mean, I think even if she just says, okay, whatever, Eternal Witness, pick it up. We have 9 here, right? So it just absolutely does not matter. She does choose to just leave it at home. Teferi, able to prevent any spells from being cast. And here's an attack for lethal. And Emily, able to get it done very quickly after 2 sideboard games, thanks to the power of Knight of Autumn. And what a round that was. Bant Blink, not something I've seen too much of. Cosmic Rebirth, a card you got the privilege of reading to me, looked incredibly powerful in her deck. And she's able to dispatch of Hammer very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
that was awesome for Emily. Drake, do we have any upcoming events if someone wants to play a deck like Emily's coming up?
Yeah, if you're looking to play some Modern, or frankly, any of Magic's wonderful formats, we have some events coming up here in June, Chicagoland. There is a Modern Showdown. You can register Bant Blake, play for $10,000, and a chance to play in the NRG Championships at the end of the year. Of course, if you're a Legacy fan, you can play on Sunday, get a little bit of Legacy action in the Legacy Trial that will happen then. Following that, July, we are looking at St. Louis. That's going to be a team showdown. I know you love team events, Mason. I certainly do too. And you're going to have a team showdown. Everyone gets to qualify there for the NRG Championship. So a good chance to play a really sweet event with your squad. Legacy Trial on Sunday. Once again, if you are a Legacy fanatic, I certainly am. I think you're a little bit lower on it, but whatever. And then
I just bought duels, baby, from the good people at NRG.
Fine. And then our third event after that, we got Detroit. That one's going to happen in August. Modern, once again, if you are a Modern fan, it's going to be a great series of events for you as you get yet another chance to play for $10,000 in the end of year showdown. And of course, we have a Pioneer Trial on Sunday. So I'm sorry, if you're into Legacy, this event may not be for you. If you're in any of the other formats, that one certainly is. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to bring round number 3 to you very, very shortly.